up-to-date look at how the recovery is going in the United States, we have chosen to focus on three key data points that can be observed daily and that represent activity at the center of the shutdown crisis. We have observed airline passengers going through U.S. security checkpoints. We've examined the number of people dining in restaurants, and we've used U.S. credit card data to track spending. Unfortunately, the second quarter bounce back appears to be stalling out, or at least slowing down. And that's because of the face of the virus surging in many of the Sun Belt states. And these are the states that chose to open their economies a little faster than states in the northern climes that were hit very hard by the virus early in the pandemic. Now, air travel was one of the very first sectors hit hard by the pandemic, as nations closed their doors to international travelers, as domestic business travel was sharply curtailed, and as tourists stopped flying. Prior to the pandemic, over 2 million people a day passed through the U.S. Transportation Security Administration. By April, the number of people going through the security checkpoints had fallen to below 200,000. That's 90% below pre-pandemic levels. In July, the numbers were running close to 750 passengers a day, or about 40% of pre-pandemic level. But the uptrend had flattened out in the last several weeks. Bars and restaurants were shut down in most of the U.S. in March. Using seating diners data from the online reservation service known as OpenTable, one can observe that the year-over-year change moved to 100% down, reflecting the complete shutdown in March. The recovery began in May as restaurants were allowed outdoor seating. Some states allowed indoor dining in June, and the number of diners very briefly recovered to 50% of pre-pandemic levels. Unfortunately, as the virus started to surge in many Sun Belt states, diners became more reluctant to venture out, and seating dropped off in July to around 60% below pre-pandemic levels. Retail sales make up some 2/3 of U.S. GDP. Looking at credit card spending gives a daily view of evolving trends. Opportunity Insights, which is a group of academic and other researchers from a variety of institutions, is based in Harvard University. And Opportunity Insights pulls together credit card data and separates it by income groupings based on postal zip codes and average income data. There are three distinctive observations from the credit card data. First, the lowest level of spending was reached in April, and the bounce back was in full swing in May. Second, low-income consumers were much more likely to increase spending in May rather than high-income consumers. The high-income consumers displayed much more caution in their spending behavior patterns. And three, the bounce back stalled in July or in late June as virus fears began increasing again and some reopening plans were delayed or temporarily reversed. The daily data we are tracking from airlines, restaurants, and credit card spending indicates the economic recovery is stalling. We're entering a difficult new phase in the United States where the economic recovery is now heavily dependent on what are the activities in which consumers are willing to engage. A V-shaped economic recovery was always considered too optimistic by most analysts, including ourselves. Realistically, a return to pre-pandemic economic activity is going to take many years. I'm Blue Putnam, Chief Economist, CME Group.